Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She asked me why intimacy mattered so much. Not angrily, not even defensively. Like it was a technical question, something inefficient in the system. I remember staring at her phone lighting up on the counter while she waited for my answer, her thumb hovering, already halfway somewhere else. My name is Daniel Harper, 39, back-end systems engineer. I build things that work quietly or not at all. Until that night, I thought marriages were the same. It was a Tuesday. We were sitting across from each other at Applebee's, one of those places you go to prove you still go out. The menu stayed closed. She scrolled. I watched condensation slide down my glass. She said intimacy felt outdated, like pressure. Said connection could exist without all that physical expectation. Said I should evolve. She worked as an SMM director. Metrics, reactions, engagement rates. Her world lived in notifications and comments that never slept. Mine lived in logs, schedules, systems that only mattered when they failed. I had noticed the shift months earlier. Late nights with the screen tilted away. Headphones in bed. Laughter that did not include me. When I asked who she was talking to, she said it was work. Then said it was harmless. Then said it was none of my business. Each answer arrived faster than the last, like she had rehearsed them. At home, Disney Plus kept running in the background while she typed. Episodes stacked up without being watched. I tried touching her shoulder once. She flinched, not dramatically, just enough to register. Like a system rejecting an incompatible input. I did not argue. I rarely do. I started observing instead. Timestamp patterns. Mood fluctuations. The way she smiled at the screen and went blank when she looked at me. The way she stopped asking where I was. A week later, I bought a new laptop at Best Buy. Paid cash. New Apple ID. Separate cloud. It felt less like betrayal and more like redundancy planning. Systems fail. You isolate damage. That night, I slept on my side of the bed while she whispered to someone with the door closed. Her voice was softer than it had been with me in years. I wrote one line in a notes app before falling asleep. Silence is still a form of architecture. The Honda Accord sat in the driveway the next morning, quiet, patient. I stood there longer than necessary before getting in, realizing something had already shifted. She had replaced intimacy with access. And access, once given elsewhere, is almost never returned. I did not know yet that she had already met him in person. I only knew the system at home was no longer secure. And once I see that, I do not patch. I rebuild. The next phase was silence. Not the emotional kind people notice. The operational kind. I stopped asking questions. Stopped checking her schedule. Stopped reacting when her phone buzzed at midnight, and she smiled at the ceiling like someone else was lying beside her. Systems reveal more when you stop poking them. I left the family group chat first. No announcement. Just vanished. Then I removed shared albums from my phone. Thousands of photos collapsed into a gray loading icon and disappeared. I watched her notice 2 days later, the pause in her scrolling, the way she reopened the app like it might fix itself. She did not ask me about it. We started shopping separately at Costco, not intentionally at first. Just drift. 2 carts. 2 receipts. She paid with her card, I paid with mine. I remember thinking how strange it was that the loudest store we went to together now felt like neutral territory. No arguments. No coordination. Just parallel movement. At home, Disney Plus kept playing for her. For me, the apartment sounded empty even when she was in the next room. I worked later than usual, not because I had to, but because no one noticed when I did. Back-end work has a way of stretching time. You can disappear into a task and come back hours later unchanged on the outside. One night, she mentioned a creator she had been following. Not by name, just casually. Said he was funny, authentic, always there when she needed a break. She said it like a recommendation, not a confession. I nodded once and filed it away. I bought a new phone the next week. Same model, different account. The old one went into a drawer. Notifications stopped bleeding into my evenings. When I drove, the car felt quieter without her playlists auto-starting. She noticed the phone too. Asked why I needed a separate one. Her tone was curious, not suspicious. Like she was evaluating a strategy. I said it was cleaner. She accepted that answer too quickly. At Applebee's again, weeks later, she talked about boundaries. About how intimacy should not be demanded. About how attention could exist without obligation. I listened without interrupting. counting how many times she checked her screen while explaining why presence mattered more than touch. She never asked if I was okay. That was the tell. When someone replaces intimacy with access, they assume access is infinite. They assume silence means compliance. They assume the system is stable because it has not crashed yet. They forget that the most dangerous changes happen quietly, in the background, logged but unseen. The confirmation did not arrive as a confession. It never does. It arrived as a timing issue. She started coming home later on Thursdays. Not dramatically late, just enough that dinner cooled twice. She said it was a brand check-in, then a strategy session, then a creator meetup she forgot to mention. Each explanation arrived before I asked. I drove the car those nights with no destination, stopping at McDonald's around midnight, sitting under fluorescent lights with fries going cold while I watched couples talk without phones between them. I noticed how silence feels different when it is chosen. At home, Disney Plus kept playing. Same series. Same episode progression. Like a placeholder for presence. She watched with her phone in hand, eyes flicking between screen and screen, attention never landing. I began separating infrastructure. Shared cloud access first. Then calendar visibility. Then password managers. She did not object. She adapted. Adaptation is easier when you are already elsewhere. The shift happened one Sunday morning. She left early, dressed with intention, not comfort. Hair done. Shoes she never wore to work. I asked where she was going. She said coffee. Did not say with whom. I did not follow. I do not chase processes once they reveal intent. Instead, I opened the router logs. Nothing invasive. Just traffic volume. Peak usage times. Streaming platforms. Messaging services. There was a new pattern. A single IP handshake repeating late nights, early mornings. Always brief. Always consistent. That was enough. That night, she came home lighter. Less guarded. Like someone who had offloaded something heavy. She talked more. Asked how my day was. Touched my arm once, experimentally, like testing if the system still responded. I did not react. Later, as she slept, her phone lit up face down. I did not pick it up. I did not need content. Architecture tells you more than messages ever could. The next week, she mentioned him by role. A streamer. Always online. Always present. Someone who listened without expectations. She said it like a feature comparison. I nodded again. I moved my paycheck into a new account the following Friday. Updated billing addresses. Forwarded my mail. Quiet changes. Non-disruptive. Reversible only if you notice them in time. At Costco, our carts diverged permanently. She filled hers with shared future. I filled mine with exit supplies. Toiletries. Storage bins. The mundane tools of departure. She noticed the bins and laughed. Asked if I was reorganizing. I said yes. That was not a lie. Because when intimacy is replaced with access, departure is not an argument. It is a migration. And migrations do not announce themselves. They complete before anyone realizes the environment has changed. The first physical overlap showed up as an absence. She stopped coming to bed at all on Fridays. Said she fell asleep on the couch. Said she did not want to wake me. The explanation came prepackaged, delivered before concern could surface. That was how I knew it was no longer theoretical. I began sleeping lighter. Not anxious. Alert. The way you do when monitoring a system under load. One Friday night, the door opened after midnight. Keys placed carefully on the counter, not dropped. Shoes aligned. A courtesy silence reserved for rooms you no longer feel entitled to disturb. She moved through the apartment like a guest. The smell was different. Not perfume. Energy. The kind that follows proximity, not screens. I stayed still. I did not confront. I did not test. I let the data settle. The next morning, she was cheerful. Made coffee. Talked about an upcoming campaign. Touched my shoulder again, more confidently this time, like she was checking if guilt still registered. I left the apartment and drove the car without music, noticing how calm the streets felt when nothing demanded my attention. I stopped at Costco alone, bought a single set of towels, neutral colors, nothing that looked shared. The receipt went into a folder I labeled with the new address I had not told her about. At home, Disney Plus kept playing its loop. She sat cross-legged on the couch, phone balanced in her palm, laughing at something I could not hear. She did not notice me watching. That afternoon, she mentioned a stream event. Said it was exciting to finally meet people in real life who understood her. She did not say his name. She did not need to. I nodded and went back to my desk. I finalized the lease that night, sent the deposit, scheduled utilities, quiet transactions that rearrange lives without noise. I packed my clothes into the bin she had laughed at, folded carefully, nothing rushed. At Applebee's that weekend, she talked about how relationships needed flexibility, how people changed, how intimacy could not be forced. She said all this while checking her phone under the table, attention split, body present, but already allocated elsewhere. I did not disagree, because once intimacy becomes optional, presence becomes transactional. And once presence is transactional, departure becomes logical. That night, I slept on the edge of the bed and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just confirmation. The system was no longer failing. It had already been replaced. All that remained was to disconnect cleanly, without alerts. The exit began with access removal. I logged out of shared services first. Streaming profiles vanished. The calendar stopped syncing. Cloud folders returned permission errors instead of memories. I did it between deployments at work, the same way you decommission a legacy service without taking production down. She noticed pieces, not the pattern. Asked why Disney Plus kept asking her to choose a profile again. Asked why shared reminders stopped showing up. I said nothing. Silence lets people fill gaps with their own assumptions. I started sleeping at the new place 2 nights a week. Did not announce it. Just left a note on the counter saying I was working late. Which was true, just not in the way she imagined. Those nights, I drove the car until the city thinned out, stopping at McDonald's after midnight, sitting alone with a coffee that tasted like it had been waiting for me. The quiet felt earned. No notifications. No explanations. At home, she grew restless. More affectionate. More present. The timing was precise. She asked if everything was okay. Her concern felt procedural, like a system check triggered by reduced engagement. I told her I was busy. She accepted that answer the same way she had accepted my silence before. Quickly, conveniently. The shift came when I removed my card from our shared Costco account. She went to check out one afternoon, and the payment failed. She texted a question mark. I replied with a thumbs up. Nothing else. That night, she tried to talk. Not argue. Talk. About distance. About how she felt me pulling away. About how intimacy should not be a transaction. I listened. Did not interrupt. Did not correct her timeline. After, she went quiet. Watched me like I had changed languages mid-sentence. The next morning, I packed the rest of my clothes. Took only what I needed. Left the apartment cleaner than I found it. No drama. No notes. At Applebee's that weekend, she suggested we reconnect. Suggested a reset. Suggested therapy. She put her phone face down for the first time in months, like a gesture meant to signal seriousness. I noticed. I did not respond. Because when someone replaces intimacy with access, they assume access can be restored with effort. They believe the door is still there because it has not slammed. They do not understand that some exits do not echo. By the time she realized I had changed my address, the system had already finalized the migration. Accounts closed. Utilities transferred. Keys returned. I did not disappear. I became unreachable. And that was when the questions started to change. She started asking questions framed as concern. Not accusations. Not anger. Just soft probes, sent at reasonable hours. Messages about logistics. About mail. About whether I was eating properly. The tone was calibrated, like a campaign trying to recover lost engagement. I answered when the questions were functional. Ignored the rest. The distance did something to her. Without constant access, she lost rhythm. Her messages arrived in clusters now, not streams. The streamer stopped filling the silence the way she thought he would. Online presence does not replace absence when the audience leaves. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my new place. I did not open the door. I watched through the peephole as she stood there, phone in hand, typing, deleting, typing again. She looked smaller without her screens framing her. Later, she texted that she just wanted to talk. Said she felt shut out. Said she did not understand how things had gone so far without a real conversation. I replied with one sentence. I am not unavailable. I am unavailable to you. She stopped texting for 3 days after that. On the 4th day, she suggested dinner. Applebee's again. Familiar ground. Neutral lighting. A place where people perform normalcy. I agreed, because clarity does not require avoidance. She arrived early. Phone face down. I searching my face for cues. She talked about missing us. about how she had never meant to replace anything, about how the streamer was just noise, just validation, not real. I listened, ate slowly, let her words run out on their own. She asked why intimacy had mattered so much to me, why I could not adapt, why I had chosen distance over understanding. I did not correct her premise. I told her intimacy was not the problem. Access was. That silence landed differently. She did not fill it. After dinner, I drove the car alone, stopping at McDonald's out of habit, not hunger. Sat there with the engine running, realizing something had finally completed. Not the breakup. That had been over for months. The recalibration. She began calling after that. Not often. Just enough to test availability. Each call went to voicemail. Each voicemail went unanswered. She started watching Disney Plus alone again, posting screenshots of shows we used to watch together, as if shared history could summon shared presence. It did not. When someone questions why intimacy matters, they are really asking how much access they can remove before consequences appear. She had found the answer. So had I. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. No dramatic fallout. No public collapse. Just a slow destabilization on her side that mirrored the calm I had built on mine. Silence does not scream, but it does spread. She started posting more. Not content for work. Personal things. Quotes about growth. About letting go. About learning to love yourself. The engagement spiked briefly, then flattened. Attention without a target dissipates quickly. I stopped by Best Buy one evening after work, not to buy anything urgent. Just to replace a cable I did not actually need. Walking those aisles felt symbolic. Clean shelves. Clear pricing. Everything labeled. No ambiguity. I paid and left without browsing. At my place, the walls stayed bare. I did not rush to fill them. Space is easier to understand when you let it exist. She sent a message asking if we could talk about logistics. Furniture. Remaining shared items. I responded with a proposed pickup time. Neutral. Efficient. No commentary. She arrived with her car packed heavier than necessary, like she expected resistance. I handed her the box I had prepared. Everything sorted. Labeled. No personal notes mixed in. She stood there longer than needed, scanning my face for emotion. I gave her none. Later that night, I drove the Honda Accord through empty streets, ending up at McDonald's again, ordering the same thing out of routine. Sitting there, I realized routines are not habits. They are anchors, and anchors can be moved. She tried one last time to reframe the story. A long message about how she never meant to hurt me. How online attention had blurred boundaries. How it did not mean she loved me less. Just differently. I read it once, then archived it. Because love that requires explanation after replacement is not love. It is branding. At Costco the following weekend, I walked the aisles alone. One cart. One receipt. No scanning for approval. No shared planning. I bought what I needed and nothing that suggested a future I had already exited. She stopped reaching out after that. The streamer filled her feed again. New faces. New noise. The system compensated the only way it knew how. And me? I slept through the night for the first time in months. No alerts. No vibrations. No one waiting for access. When intimacy is questioned, it is already being rationed. When access is revoked, the loss becomes visible. She had asked why intimacy mattered. Now she was starting to understand why absence does. The question finally arrived without context. Not framed as concern. Not wrapped in logistics. Just a message sent late, after midnight, when attention dries up and reality gets loud. She asked why I left the way I did. Why there was no fight. No closure. No explanation she could respond to. I did not answer right away. I was at home, sitting on the floor with my back against an empty wall, laptop open but untouched. Outside, traffic moved without urgency. Inside, nothing demanded anything from me. Her world had begun to narrow. The streamer stopped replying as fast. The always available presence turned conditional once novelty wore off. Online noise fades when there is no one real to triangulate it against. I knew that would happen. Systems built on attention collapse when attention becomes scarce. She noticed before I did. She tried to reinsert herself into my routine. Commented on an old post. Liked a photo she had ignored when we were together. Watched my profile stories without reacting. Passive pings. Status checks. I remained still. She suggested dinner again. Not Applebee's this time. Somewhere new. Somewhere symbolic. I declined without explanation. Availability, once revoked, does not return through negotiation. That night, she posted screenshots of Disney Plus episodes we used to watch together, captions about comfort and familiarity. Digital echoes. Attempts to anchor memory where presence used to be. I did not engage. The next morning, I drove the car early, stopping at McDonald's before sunrise, the place nearly empty, lights too bright for the hour. I sat there longer than usual, not because I was lost, but because there was nothing pulling me elsewhere. When you remove yourself cleanly, people assume there is a return path. They believe silence is temporary. A tactic. A pause before reconciliation. They do not consider that silence can be structural. She sent one final message that afternoon. Short. Direct. She asked why intimacy had mattered so much to me if I could walk away without trying to fix anything. I read it twice. Then I replied. I said intimacy was never about proximity. It was about priority. And when I stopped being one, I stopped participating. No follow-up. No elaboration. She did not respond. That was the moment she understood what had actually happened. Not abandonment. Replacement in reverse. She had replaced intimacy with access. I had replaced access with absence. And absence does not negotiate. The weeks after that felt like living inside a stabilized system. No spikes. No alerts. Just steady, predictable quiet. I woke up early without an alarm. Cooked simple meals. Worked without interruption. The absence of commentary became a kind of luxury. She tried indirect routes after direct access failed. Mutual contacts. Casual check-ins disguised as concern. Someone mentioned she had been asking how I was doing, whether I seemed okay. I said yes and changed the subject. Her online presence grew sharper. More curated. More deliberate. She leaned harder into visibility once privacy stopped responding. Streams. Stories. Late-night lives. The noise increased because silence was no longer available. I did not watch. One night, after a long deployment window closed at work, I drove aimlessly and ended up at Costco near closing time. The store was almost empty. One cart. One receipt. I noticed how efficient everything felt when you are not compensating for someone else's preferences. No negotiation. No shared planning. Just execution. At home, I unpacked the groceries slowly, realizing something had shifted again. Not relief. Alignment. She sent a final email, longer than the messages. Thoughtful. Structured. Like a proposal. She acknowledged mistakes. Framed growth. Asked for a conversation to understand what went wrong so it would not happen again, with someone else or with me. I did not reply. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted control. But because understanding after exit is a form of access. And I had already closed that port. That weekend, I drove the car out of the city, windows down, no destination set. I stopped at McDonald's out of habit, ordered coffee, sat there watching people come and go with their own systems, their own architectures of compromise and noise. I realized something then. She did not miss me. She missed the version of herself that existed when she had uninterrupted access to someone grounded, someone quiet, someone stable enough to absorb her overflow. When that access ended, the imbalance surfaced. I had not punished her. I had not made a statement. I had simply withdrawn participation from a system that no longer included me by design. That was the part she could not reconcile. Because when someone questions why intimacy matters, they are usually standing somewhere safe, buffered by attention elsewhere. When that buffer disappears, the question changes. And by then, the answer is no longer available. Months passed without incident. That was how I knew the separation had fully settled. No surprise messages. No accidental encounters. No shared algorithms nudging us back into the same digital rooms. The silence held, not fragile, but load-bearing. I kept my life deliberately small. Work, sleep, movement. I drove the car early in the mornings when the streets were empty, letting the engine warm before pulling away, appreciating how nothing followed me anymore. No expectations. No reactions waiting to be managed. One evening, I stopped at Applebee's out of habit, sat alone at the bar, ordered something simple, and left before the place filled up. The familiarity no longer tugged at me. It felt archived. She reached out once more, indirectly. A mutual contact mentioned she had been asking if I was seeing anyone. The question carried weight, not curiosity. I did not answer through intermediaries. That path was closed. At home, I finally unpacked the last box. Not because it needed to be done, but because I was ready to stop living around the possibility of return. I mounted shelves, filled them with books I had stopped reading when attention elsewhere demanded accommodation. I slept better after that. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the moment she had asked why intimacy mattered so much. How casually the question had landed. How confident she had been that connection could be outsourced without consequence. She had not been cruel. She had been efficient. And efficiency works until it replaces the wrong thing. I never blocked her. I never made declarations. I simply removed myself from the architecture that required my presence to function. That was the part no one warned her about. Because when you replace intimacy with access, you assume access can be restored. You believe availability is a resource, not a boundary. She questioned why I needed intimacy. Now she questioned why I left. The answer was never emotional. It was structural. I did not leave to teach a lesson. I left because systems built without mutual priority fail quietly, then completely. One night, I drove past a McDonald's and did not stop. Kept going instead. Let the road stretch out without needing a pause. I was not missing anything. And for the first time in a long time, nothing was missing me either. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.